titled Beauty, Excess, and the Grotesque in the Late-Capitalism Critique of Lauren Greenfield. The abstract is this. Embracing slow cinema and focusing on women are both underappreciated approaches to filmmaking when it comes to representing the financial crises. One filmmaker who explores the financial crises through these underused techniques is Lauren Greenfield. In this paper, I will explore 3 of Greenfield's films through the lens of the theorist Godmilow and Nicholas Mirzoeff to show how alternative ways of looking provide a new critique of capitalism. Typically, films on financial crises are fast-paced. Juliette Feyel and Clémence Fourton, 2019 article, Post-2008 Films, The Financial Crisis in Fictions and Documentaries, argues that 2008 crisis films are represented in specific structures and patterns. Clichéd quick cuts showed phone calls, graphs, and skyscrapers. These visual depictions are limiting, often excluding how crises affects daily life in women. An alternative approach is found in the work of Greenfield, including the films The Queen of Versailles 2012, Generation of Wealth 2018, and The Kingmaker 2019. I argue that Greenfield uses beauty, excess, and the grotesque to critique late capitalism. Greenfield favors mundane, daily life with long shots of mansions with neglected pools, motivational posters in a vacated office, and dog poop left on the carpet after the nannies are laid off. She pays attention to women in a subgenre where women are largely absent and uses slow cinema techniques in a subgenre that mostly embraces fast-paced narratives. Interviewees who would typically be depicted in quick clips are given screen time to humanize themselves. Greenfield juxtaposes excess with relatable reasons for its pursuit, drawing attention away from subjects and toward the system that it creates, coming close to accomplishing what Godmilow terms post-real filmmaking and Mirzoeff Visuality too. Ultimately, Greenfield invites the audience to sit with her subjects, identify with them, and begin to imagine an alternative world. Thank you, Emma.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for choosing this over the faculty search and webinar. Okay. So, as Dana said, my paper is called Beauty, Excess, and the Grotesque in the Late-Capitalism Critique of Lauren Greenfield. So I'll be discussing who Greenfield is, how she approaches media, what I'm adding to the scholarly conversation, and I'll also provide examples of Greenfield's work. So first of all, who is Lauren Greenfield? So Lauren Greenfield is a photographer and a documentary filmmaker, and her work focuses on luxury, consumption, and displays of wealth, the intersection of sexuality and capitalism, details revealing neoliberalism shaping contemporary life, and women, especially teenagers and middle-aged women in metropolitan cities. So Greenfield isn't trying to interrogate the individual, but the system. So an example of this is there was a 4-year-old girl playing dress-up, mimicking the sexualization of women depicted in the media. So Greenfield is not criticizing the girl, but the society. Obviously, you're not going to criticize a 4-year-old and say, you know, like, what are you doing, 4-year-old? You know, so to NPR, Michelle Norris in 2002, Greenfield stated, Allegra was a very innocent girl, but you can see in her expression and the posture and the clothes that little girls mimic the eroticized moves and fashions of what they see in the bigger popular culture, and that idea of the relationship between the extreme and the mainstream is very important. I'm really trying to look at the pathological in the everyday and the kind of moments in our everyday lives rather than saying that there's anything kind of strange or abnormal about the particular girls. So this example shows how individuals arrive into the world and quickly learn societal expectations even before comprehending them fully. Sexuality is linked to neoliberalism because girls learn what they need to do to fit in and be accepted by friends, mates, and employers. So these details and rituals that Greenfield documents in individuals and works to examine neoliberalism. So David Harvey in the Oxford University Press defines neoliberalism as, quote, a political project to reestablish the conditions for capital accumulation and to restore the power of the economic elites. So Lauren Greenfield is exploring neoliberalism in her work, but her work stands in contrast to the way that neoliberal capitalism is typically depicted in film and other media. Neoliberal capitalism is depicted in clichéd ways in many films, but Greenfield's depictions of the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis paints a more complex portrait by one, questioning the system that led to certain outcomes rather than individuals' personal decisions, 2, foregrounding women, and 3, empathizing with her subjects. So as I said, there's a lot of cliches in the post-2008 recession film subgenre, and Juliette Feyel and Clémence Fourton's 2019 article, Post-2008 Films, The Financial Crisis in Fictions and Documentaries, argues that 2008 crisis films represent finance in specific structures and patterns. So typically, quick cuts of phone calls, graphs, and figures imply that money travels fast around the world. And other tropes include skyscrapers, computer screens, phone calls, news clips from the media, explaining things in, quote, plain English, foreshadowing impending disaster, 2008 as one crisis among many. Also, things take place in strip clubs a lot, so just a little vignette. The Guerrilla Girls art group said, do women have to be naked to get into the Met Museum? So my question is, in recession films, do women have to be naked to be included in these films? And the second part of my vignette, before back to our regularly scheduled program, I just want to point out that Lauren Greenfield is a female film director, and as you can see, the Guerrilla Girls point out that in 1999, 9% senators, 4% female directors in Hollywood, and today, 25 female U.S. senators and still 4% female directors. So just pointing that out. To continue with the cliches in these typical films, we've got bankers burying their heads in their hands and then exiting their offices with their belongings in their cardboard boxes. We've got evil bankers based on the 1987 film Wall Street, based on Gordon Gekko. And then literally dollar bills. So sometimes they get really creative to represent money this way here. So we're missing, not that these films are horrible films, a lot are really nice films actually, but they're missing a perspective, and there's a lot of different ways that they could go about filmmaking that have been neglected. Instead, these tropes are what we see. So, and sometimes too, the visual depictions are limiting, and they exclude how crisis affects daily life and women. So I'll be discussing 3 films by Lauren Greenfield. So there's The Queen of Versailles of 2012, Generation Wealth in 2018, and The Kingmaker in 2019. And a couple of theorists to look through this are Nicholas Mirzoeff and Jill Godmilow. So alternative ways of looking can provide a new critique of capitalism. So Mirzoeff argues that visuality 1 is visuality that operates typically to support cultural hegemony. Visuality 2 is visual representation that is neutral towards cultural hegemony. And visuality 2 also includes counter-visuality, which is visual representation that challenges cultural hegemony, such as challenging policies that led to financial disaster and recession. And so Mirzoeff states in The Right to Look, quote, "The history from below in all senses recognized that its task was to create an alternative mode of historical identification for the would-be revolutionary, entailing the creation of counter-visuality," unquote. And so I argued that Greenfield's work provides counter-visuality to neoliberalism. Then Jill Godmilow argues that oftentimes documentaries frame a subject and ask viewers to imagine change. However, the visualization limits viewers to only see the current way of doing things, negating the point. Jill Godmilow argues in Kill the Documentary, a letter to filmmakers, students, and scholars, quote, "For starters, never situate your viewer in the there-then of what is represented. Instead of putting us within it, put us à côté, next to it, by examining its underpinnings, its ideological premises, its various representations." So I argue that Greenfield's work is post-real filmmaking as well. So Greenfield's approach, she offers a new approach in filmmaking because she does not focus on men or the technical aspects of high finance. So Greenfield is favoring women and mundane daily life, as I stated. So Greenfield is embracing counter-visuality and post-real filmmaking, but I want to add that she adds on the dimension of ensuring 3-dimensional characters by using an empathetic gaze, which I'm calling empathetic post-real counter-visuality. So by showing the effects of neoliberal capitalism without directly placing that as her subject, Greenfield invites the viewer to ask how these characters with extreme behavior, but based on logical decision-making, how did we arrive here? This is a more effective way of approaching the subject to neoliberalism. So Greenfield reveals the system through indirect details. So what are some of the details of beauty, excess, and the grotesque that Greenfield employs? So come on a journey with me through her work here. So an example from The Queen of Versailles is Jackie Siegel, the protagonist and female head of household the film revolves around, bought 10 shopping carts of Christmas presents for her family. So should we gawk at her? Well, Greenfield explains that while most people aren't quite that extreme with 10 shopping carts from Walmart, most people go to Walmart and come out with a few more items than they had intended to going in. So in this way, we should see a reflection in Jackie. An example from Generation Wealth is plastic surgery. So an executive who got plastic surgery explains that in finance, her clients like to be around beautiful people. While the behavior might seem extreme, Greenfield allows subjects enough screen time to become 3-dimensional characters. Soon what sounded odd sounds logical in the neoliberal system. Viewers are invited to sympathize with her subjects. Another picture of plastic surgery. So I just want to point out that usually the way that plastic surgery is depicted in media are before and after. So Greenfield is unique in that she video recorded a plastic surgery happening and just plastic surgeries in general as part of a body of work. And so she kind of shows the grotesque process that is usually concealed when we're talking about plastic surgery, so that we just kind of see the, you know, the outcome, and it doesn't seem as gory. Another example is luxury goods, and this is from the Kingmaker. So First Lady of the Philippines, Imelda Marcos's 3,000 pairs of shoes. And I did the math, so in case you're wondering, that is 8.2 years without repeating a single shoe. So there you have it. So other examples include luxury goods, and even these 11 and 13-year-old, we've got already purchasing Dior here. So, you know, we've got bottle girls. So again, Greenfield is highlighting the sexualization of capitalism in representation, and she actually did a film about this nightclub, Magic City. And then adult film stars. So instead of viewing porn stars as women who are either one, in need of rescuing, or two, empowered, making the money, Greenfield puts prostitutes on the same level as the viewer. So we're not looking down on them, but if we're not looking down on them, we're not necessarily agreeing. Anyway, they're people who made decisions that made sense for them within neoliberalism that had unfortunate consequences. And this is the porn star who was famous for the $3,000 party with Charlie Sheen, and she got plastic surgery later because she was really wanted to go past her like underage appeal. Then thinness. So most women are anorexic, but most watch their weight. So again, she's going at the extremes, but I think we can see reflections in society beyond the extremes that, you know, maybe we don't identify with the extremes, but we can still see what she's getting at. So a 13-year-old weighing herself in California. And I also want to point out that, you know, it seems pretty normal to just weigh yourself, but I think it's important to step back, and by creating an image of this, just capturing a moment in everyday life and saying, hey, you know, this is important, let's take a look at this, that it might be a mundane act, but it's kind of a bizarre act. And I think that's something that's special about Greenfield, because she's really influenced by anthropology, because her mother was an anthropologist, and so it's like turning that lens on Los Angeles, which Greenfield sees as representative of America and the Western world. Private planes, big houses, in this case 90,000 square feet, the biggest house in the United States, and mimicking the Versailles in France of Louis XIV. The Anthropocene as postcard, performing as good neoliberal subjects who have succeeded in the game. Picking up McDonald's in a limousine. Bourdieu would say that the limo is communicating the seagulls' nouveau riche status because they bought into capitalism and didn't quite pull off good taste. The Big Macs give it away. And then this is a film still I took of the Queen of Versailles. It's a dog playing with a cockroach with nannies in the background. So even with help, the amount of work needed for the upkeep of their household has surpassed its limit. Neglected pools. People aspired to wealth higher than they were able to maintain. And then inescapable capitalism. Lululemon hosted yoga in front of Tiffany & Co. at a mall in California. And so even when you're trying to kind of have a spiritual retreat, it is somehow tied up in capitalism. The empathetic postreal counter-visuality, while Greenfield asks questions more than answers them, one example she explores in Generation Wealth is how Iceland handled the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis differently. The country allowed the banks to collapse. A former banking executive became a fisherman, so you can see this former banking executive here kissing a fish. And then this group of Icelandic women, instead of buying their clothes in the capitalist system, started a knitting circle where they get together and knit their own clothes to wear. So post-2008 films inform, but they fall short of suggesting an alternative to neoliberal capitalism. Lauren Greenfield takes a different approach. Greenfield foregrounds women in her work. She does not focus on technical aspects of finance, but on the details: shopping, cosmetic surgery, and ostentatious home interiors. Instead of focusing directly on the subject of capitalism, Greenfield shows the viewer the ways it manifests itself in society, a coup today. Greenfield takes everyday objects and rituals that the viewer is familiar with and closely examines them. Greenfield's scenes might focus on women buying expensive purses, but the viewer is asked to put the pieces together outside of the frame. How did we arrive here at this simple, seemingly innocuous scene? By showing the excesses, Greenfield suggests a world without capitalism. By showing the extremes, Greenfield shows us that the way capitalism has shaped culture has gone too far, with parallels to Rome right before its collapse. Greenfield juxtaposes excess, but with relatable reasons for its pursuit, drawing tension away from subjects and towards the system that creates it, coming close to accomplishing what Godmilow terms postreal filmmaking in Mirzoeff Visuality 2. Ultimately, Greenfield invites the audience to sit with her subjects, identify with them, and begin to imagine an alternative world. Thank you. And so if anyone has any comments or questions.
Should we turn that off for the comments or questions?
Do you know how to, I'm guessing this button?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Got it? That one?
Yeah, I don't know. Go for it.
I think this one